They were just another love triangle, a common story of passion and jealousy. But when obsession turned deadly, no one saw the betrayal coming, until it was too late. How does love curdle into something sinister? What happens when insecurity festers into an obsession that leads to murder? This is the chilling case of Keondra Langston, a woman who had everything going for her, until she crossed paths with the one person willing to kill to erase her. Before we unravel this shocking crime, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more chilling tales of love, lies, jealousy and betrayal. Keondra KeKe Langston was the kind of woman who turned heads wherever she went. At 32, she had built a name for herself as one of Ohio's most sought-after hairstylists, with a clientele that stretched beyond state lines. Her salon chair was always booked, and her social media was a carefully curated showcase of her talent, her beauty, and her high-maintenance lifestyle, designer bags, luxury vacations, and an unapologetic attitude that made it clear she knew her worth. But KeKe wasn't just about looking good. She had a bold, unfiltered personality that made her unforgettable. She spoke her mind, moved with confidence, and believed in securing the best for herself, whether in her career, her friendships, or her relationships. Her followers ate up her posts about self-love, financial independence, and knowing when to walk away. But there was one thing she hadn't walked away from, at least not yet: Zahir. Zahir was 36, a personal trainer with the kind of physique that kept women staring and a reputation that kept them chasing. Charismatic and smooth, he knew how to command attention, and for 4 years, he had KeKe wrapped around his finger. Their relationship was passionate, intense, and at times, volatile. They fought hard, loved harder, and always found their way back to each other. KeKe called him her king, showering him with praise on social media, posting pictures of their lavish dates, romantic vacations, and moments that painted the image of a love worth envying. But behind the carefully crafted aesthetic, cracks had been forming for years. Zahir had a wandering eye, one that KeKe had ignored more times than she wanted to admit. The late-night disappearances, the text messages he swore were just friends, the gut feeling that something wasn't right she knew. But love made her stay. Love made her fight for something that wasn't hers to keep. The final straw came when she caught him, red-handed, with a woman she had suspected for months. The confrontation was explosive. Words were thrown, accusations made, and when KeKe walked out that door, she told herself she was done for good. But love doesn't always let go that easily. Zahir didn't waste time mourning their breakup. Within 2 months, he was already seeing someone new, moving on so fast it made KeKe question if she had ever meant anything to him at all. The betrayal stung, not just because he had moved on, but because of who he had moved on with. KeKe's social media took on a different tone. The posts about love and partnership disappeared, replaced with cryptic messages about loyalty, betrayal, and wasted time. Meanwhile, Zahir was busy flaunting his new relationship, his new love, the woman who had been lurking in the shadows all along. Her name was Sade Merritt. Sade Merritt had never been the type to demand attention. At 28, she lived a quiet, simple life, working as a dental assistant in Ohio. She wasn't flashy like KeKe, wasn't the kind of woman who needed to announce herself when she walked into a room. She had always been the observer, the one who blended into the background. But beneath that quiet demeanor was something far more intense, an obsession that had been festering long before anyone realized it. Sade had admired Zahir from a distance before they ever got together. She had seen him at the gym, heard the way other women talked about him, noticed the effortless way he commanded attention. He wasn't just another man to her, he was everything. The type of man who made a woman feel chosen, who made her feel like she had won something just by being with him. And when Zahir finally gave her that attention, finally made her his, she was determined to hold on to him by any means necessary. At first, everything seemed perfect. He was charming, affectionate, and, for the first time in a long time, Sade felt seen. But there was one problem: Keondra Langston. KeKe wasn't just Zahir's ex. She was the woman he had spent 4 years with, the woman who had shared his bed, his vacations, his life. And even though their relationship had ended, she was still there lingering like a shadow over everything Sade was trying to build. KeKe was on his phone, in his social media history. On social media they were still whispered about by her fans. Everywhere Sade turned, there was KeKe. She started with small things. Scrolling through KeKe's Instagram, reading old captions, dissecting every post, watching their old videos together. She memorized the way KeKe spoke about him, the way she called him her king, the way they looked at each other in pictures. Every late-night post KeKe made, every cryptic message about disloyal men, Sade studied them like a textbook. It wasn't enough to just watch from a distance. She needed to know more. When Zahir left his phone unattended, Sade would go through it, searching for proof that KeKe was still in his life. She scrolled through his messages, checked his call log, monitored the way he interacted with her online. She watched what posts he liked, what accounts he followed, every small detail that might tell her if KeKe still had a place in his heart. Zahir told her over and over again that KeKe was just his past. "She's nothing," he would say, brushing off her concerns. "She's just bitter because I moved on." But Sade wasn't convinced. She saw the way he hesitated before answering certain questions, the way he downplayed their connection. And worst of all, she saw the one thing that made her stomach turn: he still cared. The argument started small at first. Late-night whispers in bed, Sade pressing him about why KeKe still texted him, why he still had pictures of her in his phone. But soon, those whispers turned into full-blown fights. "Why does she still text you? Why are you liking her posts? Why do you even keep in contact with her?" Zahir would sigh, roll his eyes, say something about how he couldn't control what KeKe did. But to Sade, it wasn't about control. It was about loyalty. It was about making sure there was no lingering attachment, no open door left for KeKe to walk back through. But no matter what he said, no matter how many times he reassured her, it wasn't enough. Sade didn't just want Zahir to move on, she needed KeKe to be erased completely. She needed to know that there was no way for Zahir to ever go back, no way for KeKe to ever haunt their relationship again. The more she watched, the more she realized that KeKe was still a problem. She was still a presence in Zahir's life, still a reminder of everything that had come before her. And for Sade, that was unbearable. She wanted finality. She wanted KeKe gone. Sade had been restless for weeks, but the final straw came when she saw Zahir's comment on one of KeKe's Instagram posts. It wasn't anything explicit, just a simple fire emoji under a video of KeKe showing off a new hairstyle. But to Sade, it was a betrayal. She stared at the screen, her fingers gripping her phone so tightly it felt like it might crack. He had promised her it was over. He had sworn he didn't care. Yet here he was, still giving KeKe attention, still feeding into whatever history they had. Sade's mind spiraled. What else was he doing behind her back? Were they still talking? Was KeKe still in his thoughts the way she feared? The more she thought about it, the more her stomach twisted with rage. She needed to put an end to this once and for all. She had spent so much time trying to control Zahir, making sure he stayed away from KeKe, but maybe she had been going about it all wrong. Maybe the real problem wasn't Zahir, it was KeKe. As long as KeKe was around, as long as she existed in Zahir's world, she would always be a threat. That's when the idea came to her. Not in a sudden rush, but like a slow, creeping realization. KeKe needed to be gone. Permanently. Sade started researching late at night when Zahir was asleep beside her. She combed through articles about poisons, looking for something discreet, something that wouldn't raise suspicion. That's when she found thallium, a colorless, tasteless toxin that acted slowly, mimicking a natural illness. Victims experienced nausea, weakness, and eventually organ failure. It was perfect. Her plan was simple. KeKe was a hustler, always looking for opportunities to make money. All Sade had to do was dangle the right bait. Using a burner phone, she created a fake Instagram account, complete with pictures stolen from a real socialite's page. She crafted a story: a rich woman visiting Ohio, desperate to have her hair done by the best. She messaged KeKe with an offer that was impossible to refuse. "Hey, love. I'm in town for a few days and need my hair slayed. I'll pay triple your rate if you can squeeze me in for a private home appointment. Cash up front." It didn't take long for KeKe to respond. "Bet. What time you need me?" Sade smiled. It was almost too easy. The day of the appointment, Sade prepared everything meticulously. She bought a new hoodie, oversized sunglasses, and gloves, anything to conceal her identity. She didn't want KeKe recognizing her in any way. She also prepared the poison. She bought a fruit smoothie from a local shop and carefully laced it with thallium. By the time she arrived at KeKe's place that night, everything was in place. KeKe opened the door with her usual confidence, looking Sade up and down. "Damn, girl, you mysterious as hell. You in witness protection or something?" she joked, eyeing the sunglasses and hoodie. Sade forced a laugh. "Nah, just don't like being seen too much. You know how it is." KeKe shrugged and led her inside, setting up her tools and chatting like she always did with clients. Sade sat in a chair, watching her in the mirror, studying every detail of the woman she was about to kill. She pulled out the smoothie and held it up. "I brought you a little something. Figured you might be thirsty while you work." KeKe grinned, taking it without hesitation. "Ah, that's sweet. You didn't have to." Sade smiled as KeKe took a long sip. She had no idea she was drinking her own death sentence. KeKe barely made it through the night. At first, it was just a headache, dull, nagging, nothing she hadn't pushed through before. But by the time she was packing up her tools and locking the door behind her mysterious client, something felt off. Her stomach churned, and a strange wave of exhaustion washed over her. She blamed it on the long day, the non-stop appointments, the stress of always being on the go. She popped 2 painkillers, chugged a bottle of water, and went to bed, expecting to wake up feeling better. But the next morning, it was worse. KeKe woke up drenched in sweat, her sheets soaked as if she had been running a fever all night. Her head throbbed. Her hands trembled when she reached for her phone. Her stomach twisted with nausea, forcing her to rush to the bathroom, where she collapsed in front of the toilet, heaving violently. She told herself it had to be food poisoning. Maybe something she ate didn't sit right. But by noon, she could barely stand. Her legs felt weak, her muscles aching as if she had been hit by a truck. The simplest movements took everything out of her. Even sending a text to her best friend, Tiana, felt like a struggle. "Girl, I feel like I'm dying. I ain't never been this sick." Tiana responded immediately. "You need to go to the ER, KeKe. This don't sound right." KeKe hesitated. She hated hospitals. But as another wave of nausea rolled through her, leaving her gasping and clutching the bathroom counter for support, she knew she had no choice. By the time she got to the hospital, she could barely walk on her own. The doctors ran tests, checking for everything: food poisoning, infections, even possible allergic reactions. Nothing made sense. Her blood work came back normal, yet her body was shutting down. The next few days were a blur of pain and confusion. KeKe's symptoms worsened at an alarming rate. Her hair, the same hair she had built her career around, started falling out in clumps. Her fingers curled involuntarily, stiffening to the point where she couldn't hold a brush. Her vision blurred. Her speech slurred. Panic set in. Her family demanded answers, but the doctors were baffled. They suspected a rare autoimmune disease or some kind of neurological disorder. The tests continued, but nothing explained why a perfectly healthy 32-year-old woman was deteriorating so fast. And then came the seizures. They started suddenly, violent, uncontrollable convulsions that left KeKe gasping for breath, her body arching off the hospital bed as nurses rushed to restrain her. The damage was irreversible. By the end of the week, KeKe slipped into a coma. Machines kept her alive for another 48 hours, but there was nothing more they could do. On a cold Sunday morning, Keondra Langston took her last breath. Her family was devastated. Her followers flooded her Instagram with messages of shock and grief. The Cincinnati beauty scene mourned the loss of one of their brightest stars. It wasn't until the autopsy report came back that the truth was revealed. KeKe had been poisoned. The moment Keondra Langston was pronounced dead, her family's world shattered. Her mother, Mrs. Yvonne, collapsed in the hospital hallway, wailing so loudly that nurses had to steady her trembling body. Her father, a man known for his quiet strength, stood frozen, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. KeKe's siblings broke down, their sobs echoing through the sterile hospital corridors. How? Mrs. Yvonne kept asking. How does a healthy young woman just die? The doctors had no immediate answers. But when the autopsy report confirmed thallium poisoning, grief turned to rage. Somebody had murdered KeKe. And whoever did it would pay. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, social media exploded with hashtags, hashtag justice for KeKe, hashtag who killed KeKe, hashtag RIP Keondra Langston. Her followers, thousands of them, flooded her page with heartbreak and speculation. KeKe's last Instagram post, a selfie with the caption "Ain't no woman alive that can take my place," suddenly felt eerie. People dissected every detail, wondering if she had unknowingly hinted at danger. Then came the rumors. Some said it was an envious rival in the beauty industry. Others whispered about a jealous ex. The most popular theory? Someone in Zahir's life had wanted KeKe gone. And when the public learned about Zahir's new girlfriend, Sade Merritt, all eyes turned to her. The police wasted no time launching an investigation. Detectives combed through KeKe's personal life, searching for enemies, threats, anything that pointed to foul play. But the real breakthrough came from the digital world. A forensic team traced the fake Instagram account that had booked KeKe's final appointment. It led them straight to an IP address registered under Sade Merritt's name. Surveillance footage sealed the deal. Cameras caught Sade purchasing a smoothie bottle from a nearby store just hours before KeKe's poisoning. When they pulled her phone records, the case became undeniable. Google searches filled with chilling phrases like how to poison someone undetectably in fastest-acting fatal toxins. It was no longer a question of who had done it. Now, it was just a matter of when they would catch her. The knock on Sade's apartment door came late in the evening. She opened it hesitantly, coming face to face with two detectives. The badge, the serious expressions, the tension in the air. She knew what was happening before they even spoke. "Miss Merritt, we need to talk." At first, she played dumb. "What is this about?" she asked, feigning confusion. But as soon as they started laying out the evidence, the IP address, the surveillance footage, the Google searches, Sade's mask began to crack. Her breathing grew shallow. Her hands trembled. Then, the final blow. A detective slid a photo of KeKe across the table. Not one of her glamorous Instagram pictures, but the cold, clinical autopsy image. "She suffered," the detective said. "That poison shut her body down piece by piece. And you sat back and watched her die." Sade stared at the image, her eyes glossing over. For the first time, real fear flickered in her expression. And then, in a quiet, almost detached voice, she whispered. She wouldn't let him go. Silence filled the interrogation room. Sade's eyes darted toward the photo again, and for a brief second, it seemed like she was seeing KeKe not as a rival, not as an enemy, but as a human being. Tears welled up in her eyes, but it was too late for regret. She had poisoned KeKe Langston. And now, she was going to pay for it. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation and rage. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras ready to capture the moment justice was served. KeKe Langston's family sat in the front row, their faces hardened with grief and fury. Miss Yvonne clutched a photo of her daughter, her hands trembling, her lips pressed together in silent prayer. Sade Merritt sat at the defense table, her expression eerily calm. She wore a beige jumpsuit, her once neatly styled hair now hanging limply around her face. The woman who had orchestrated KeKe's slow, agonizing death didn't look remorseful. If anything, she looked empty. The prosecutor didn't hold back in his closing argument. Sade Merritt did not act in self-defense. She did not act in a moment of passion. She acted with cold, calculated intent. She stalked Keondra Langston. She lured her into a trap. And she fed her poison with a smile on her face. That is not love. That is not heartbreak. That is pure, unfiltered evil. The jury disappeared into deliberation. It took them less than 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice rang through the silent courtroom. We, the jury, find the defendant, Sade Merritt, guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Miss Yvonne let out a guttural sob, collapsing into the arms of KeKe's father. KeKe's siblings cried openly, clutching each other, whispering prayers of gratitude. Justice had been served, but it didn't bring KeKe back. Sade didn't flinch. She stared ahead, her face unreadable. Then came the judge's ruling. For the murder of Keondra Langston, I sentence you, Sade Merritt, to death by lethal injection after 5 years of hard labor. The room erupted. Some people cheered. Others wept. The death penalty was rare, but the sheer cruelty of Sade's crime had sealed her fate. The judge's words cut through the noise. You did not just take a life. You made her suffer. You watched her body shut down, and you did nothing. You are a danger to society, and this court will ensure you never have the chance to harm another soul. Mrs. Yvonne let out a wail so raw that even the court bailiffs looked away. KeKe's father, usually a quiet man, muttered under his breath, "Burn in hell, bitch." Sade stood to be taken away, but before she left, she turned her head slightly. Her eyes found Zahir in the crowd. At least now, she said, her voice disturbingly calm, she's finally gone. Zahir looked like he had been hit with a brick. His face drained of color, his hands shook, and for the first time, true fear flickered in his eyes. He left the courthouse in a daze, ignoring the reporters screaming his name. Within days, he deleted all his social media, packed his things, and left Ohio. But no matter where he went, no matter how far he ran, he couldn't escape the truth. His love triangle had ended in murder. And now, there was no escaping the consequences. Keondra Langston never saw it coming. She was living her life, chasing her dreams, and believing she had left the past behind. But obsession doesn't fade just because someone moves on. Sade Merritt's jealousy didn't simmer, it boiled, consumed, and ultimately destroyed. She couldn't stand the thought of KeKe still existing in Zahir's orbit, so she made sure she wouldn't. This case is a chilling reminder of how dangerous unchecked obsession can be. Love, when twisted by insecurity and control, can turn into something unrecognizable, something deadly. KeKe lost her life because someone else couldn't handle her presence in the past. But the question lingers, could this have been avoided? If Zahir had cut ties more decisively, would KeKe still be alive? Should he have recognized the warning signs, the possessiveness in Sade's eyes, the obsession laced in her words? How do we know when love shifts into something sinister? One thing is certain, Keondra Langston didn't deserve this. And for the people who loved her, the pain of losing her will never fade. If this story shocked you, like and subscribe for more cases that explore the darkest intersections of love, lies, jealousy and betrayal.